How's it going? Let's get a shorter video out today. So the video that I posted 2 days ago on the teardown of the machine as well as the spindle bearing replacements, about 45 minutes long based on the YouTube analytics. Looks like people watched about 17 minutes of that, so you guys scrolled through and watched what you wanted to and skipped what you didn't, and that's perfectly fine with me. But today's video I think I'm going to do a little more bite-sized and keep it down to 15 minutes or so. So I'm just going to focus on the epoxy granite fill of the base as well as the column for today. There has been a ton of comments on YouTube about this so far from me and questions. A lot of people are wondering what ratio I'm using and how I'm coming up with a formula for epoxy granite on how much sand, how much larger stone and smaller stone to use. There's a whole science behind that and the vibration dampening and how much weight it's going to add to the machine. And I didn't have time to research all of that. I am not the expert. I don't claim to be. So I just went with an off-the-shelf product called Castanite. I talk about it a little bit more in the rest of the video, but I'll link to them in the video description. They, by and large, are not a company that sells to individuals. Excuse me. They do mostly cater to larger companies, and if you scroll through their website, you're not going to find very easily a way to just place an order for 50 pounds of their Castanite product. But if you call them or shoot them an email, the guys have been great to talk to, and they're pretty reasonable working with an individual that just wants a pretty small quantity of the epoxy granite. Sorry. So I think I paid, I'll have to look up the actual price and put it in the description, but I ended up buying 100 pounds worth, so 2 5-gallon buckets, and I think it cost me around $450 after shipping. Shipping was about $100, which is why I bought in excess more than what I thought I would need, because I didn't want to have to pay shipping twice. In reality, exactly half of that is what I used, so I would have been perfectly fine just sticking with 50 pounds of it, which doesn't sound like a lot of weight to add to the machine, but the vibration dampening characteristics of epoxy granite and the thermal stability is really why people go for it. So there's plenty of machines out there that their castings are built almost entirely or entirely of this epoxy granite. The new Sile X7 machine has an epoxy granite base to it, and it really is a great material to work with and something that's good for CNC products. So I think it's going to add, or I know it added, a lot of vibration dampening to the machine. The reason I know that is because I've taken some face mill cuts with the machine the way that it's set up right now, and compared to before I started the conversion, there was a lot of just vibration and chattering when I would use a face mill and steel with some fairly heavy cuts, and that's really cut down now. So all of that vibration isn't completely gone, but a lot of it is absorbed by the epoxy granite. So I'm extremely happy with the Castanite product that I bought, and I don't know that it's worth $450 to the average person. Not that I'm above average, but just saying, I don't know that it's a upgrade that I would recommend to everybody to do. And in the end of this video series, I'll go through, I'll recap every upgrade that I did, if I would recommend them or wouldn't recommend them if I had to do it again, and we'll just talk about all of that. But for $450 to use half of it, I'm really happy with the results that I got. I still have a 5-gallon bucket filled with it that I haven't touched yet, and I'm still undecided what I want to do with that. I may end up selling it if somebody's out there that's really interested. I'm located in upstate New York. You probably don't want to ship this too far because it's not cheap, but if somebody's looking to purchase 50 pounds of it and you want to figure out a way to get it from me, or are you willing to pay the exorbitant shipping costs, then let me know. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure that I can find a use for it around the shop or in a different machine. Maybe when I get to the surface grinder, I'll have a use for it. I doubt it, but so thanks for sticking by. This is going to be, again, I hope, a shorter video than the last one. We're just going to cover how I made the forms and the places that I added the epoxy granite, and then we'll catch up at the end with the results. Thanks. Alright, let's walk around getting ready to do the first pour. So I am going to do the base. This is it upside down, and then the column. So my original plan for the column had been to fill the entire bottom of it, so fill up into this line where I wrote fill, and that would be entirely solid with epoxy granite all the way to the bottom, and then the ball screw stops about here, and then from there up I had planned to fill 3 sides of this. So looking down, you're not going to have enough light to see, but I had planned to fill 3 sides of this. So it was epoxy granite all the way up to about 5 inches below this surface here. And I really wanted to do that because then it would be one solid pour that went all the way up the sides, give me a lot of extra rigidity and extra weight. Getting into it, so you have to pardon the mess here. All the forms that I'm using, both in the base and the column, I made out of Kydex, which is what this is. It's a thermoplastic, so typically used in making firearms holsters and things like that. That's what I used to use it for, but it has a working temperature of about 160 degrees. So once it gets to that temperature, up to like 230-ish, it is very malleable, so it's almost like rubber. And then when it cools back down again, it gets extremely rigid as far as a thin layer of plastic goes. This is 60 thousandths thick. And I had made this insert that fits down in here, and it would have sat in there. I would have glued it or sealed it on these 2 front edges here against the inside of the column. So I'm going to set that down. So it was going to be sealed on the inside surfaces of both sides as well as the bottom, and then it would allow me to fill up around it. The problem I came to was, I didn't do a great job making that form, so it's not perfectly square. There's some irregularities, and sorry for making anyone nauseous. The Z-axis ball nut actually travels up and down in there. So this would be the back of the column, this would be the side, and then this is the part that sticks out through the opening that we were just seeing. So had I had that form encroach at all on the place where this needs to move up and down or around the back here, and I had made that too small, it would no longer allow that to move up and down. It would entirely ruin the mill, and I would have to get in there somehow and maybe try to chip it out. Really, I probably would have just ruined the column and needed to see if Precision Matthews could send me a second one. So in the end, I'm not going to end up doing that. I'm going to scrap that mold. That's going to go away, and I'm just going to fill the column up to about there solid, and then it's going to stay how it is from the top. I really don't think there's going to be that much of a difference in rigidity between having that portion filled and not, and the price for getting it wrong would be the mill doesn't work anymore, and I really just don't think that's worth the trade-off. So that's what we're going to do for the column. For the base, so I hadn't seen somebody do it this way before. I've seen plenty of people fill their Precision Matthews or Grizzly bases before, and what it typically entails is masking out a portion so that they fill these side webs here, and then this center area is left entirely open so that the area where the Y ball screw moves has plenty of room to move. I'm going to go a little bit different. I wanted to try to get as much epoxy granite in this build as possible. So instead, I made a form that goes the entire way on the inside, as well as blocked off and epoxied any area that I don't want. So this is where the Z column mounts, and these 4 points here, so that's where the threaded holes are. So I masked those off, as well as this is an opening where the hollow column used to meet the hollow base, and that's going to be solid now. And then this is the area where the Z moves, or the Y ball screw moves back and forth. Actually, lift this up on its side for a second so you can see what I'm talking about. So the Y ball screw goes through here, and then it moves back and forth in and around here. That's perfectly masked off, so I'm not going to get in the way of the movement of that ball screw. There's plenty of room the way I have it masked off now. This will remain hollow, and then see if I can do this with one hand without smashing it. Okay. So this entire area is going to be completely filled. I'm going to keep it lower than the level of these faces right here, because this is where it sits on the stand, and I don't want to have it be, bowed or anything so that I have to shave it down. So it's going to come just below this surface right here. I'll keep it about a 1/4 inch below there.
and then this entire thing is just going to get a full pour, a solid pour in it, which should take up a lot of epoxy granite, and I'm hoping does a great deal for rigidity and vibration dampening. So that's what we plan on doing, and I have for now, I have 2 of these. So this is a 5-gallon bucket of the epoxy granite with a single part of the epoxy mixed in it already, and then the second part of the epoxy right there. I do have 2 of these full setups. I'm gonna mix one first and see how far that gets me. I can always do a second mix. The working time is about 4 to 5 hours on that, so I'm gonna split that up into quarters, mix it up so it's just easier to mix the 2 parts. So I'll evenly split that bucket up, which you'll see in a minute, and then I will mix it and start doing these pours. If I need to open that second bucket, it's just as easy as making that into quarters as well and using as much of that as possible.
I think I did a pretty bad job while I'm reviewing this video as I'm editing it. I did a pretty bad job explaining what I'm doing in this scene. So basically I needed to split this up in a way that was manageable, that I could mix the 50 pounds worth of epoxy granite. I'm mixing it by hand. There are some like solid stone sized particles that are in there, and then some of it just feels like sand. You're definitely not going to be able to do this with any sort of a concrete mixer or a paint mixer or stirrer. You really just need to get in there with your hands and mix all the aggregate together. So the best way I could think to do this was to do it in 4 equal parts. So I just basically took, I know it's 50 pounds, I took 4 containers that would fit a quarter of it. I weighed them so that they were each equal. It turned out to be about 12.5 pounds, so 50 pounds total of the epoxy granite itself. And then I measured the entirety of the hardener and just divided that by 4, and instead of splitting that up into separate containers, I had the total weight of the canister and just poured it out until a quarter of that was gone each time. So it was pretty simple to get 4 equal parts, and then I mixed each of those up, and then when I was done I mixed them all together again and kind of shuffled it up around so I got the most even mixing as possible. It really worked out great. I think the consistency that I got was as good as I could hope for, so I would recommend doing that if you are also looking at getting this castanite.
Okay, so I now have 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th batch is actually in the bucket right now. 4 batches that are exactly 12.2 pounds each. I am going to mix 4.15 ounces of hardener into each one. I'm actually going to do that in the bucket just because it gives me more room to mix around. And then mix them nice and good, and after I'm done, pour them back into the individual buckets. And when I'm all done mixing all 4, I'm then going to put it all into the big bucket and give it one final mix. So I think that gives me the best chance of getting a mostly even mix. If I just dumped that whole thing of hardener into the bucket with all 50 pounds, I have a feeling I'm going to get good mixing in some places and no second part hardener in others, which I really don't want. So I actually, when I cracked this bucket, I've had this sitting around for, I don't know, maybe 3-4 months now since I ordered it, and I haven't opened it yet. There was quite a bit of separation between the second part of the hardener, the aggregate that was the larger clumps. So you can see down here, these are like actual stones. We're all sitting at the bottom, and then the sandy silt stuff, the real fine aggregate, was sitting on top. So it actually took me quite a bit of time to try to mix all that up, get the hardener or the first part of the epoxy mixed good into this, as well as get an equal amount of the the silt fine particles and the larger particles into each of the 4 containers. So just something to be aware of. I am assuming that that happened in shipping. If you so that bucket was only about half full, and in shipping I'm sure it got jostled around a lot, which allowed the harder, denser stuff to settle to the bottom, and then the sandy stuff and the liquid all to settle on top. So for people that have been asking, this is from Castanite. I'm going to put their website up here right now. This is a pre-mixed product, so they sent me a bucket of the hardener back here, and then they sent me the 50-gallon bucket with all of this stuff in it. I actually got 2 of those, like I said. So people have asked what I plan on doing for the ratio of larger particles to smaller particles. I just don't have the time or the effort to put into researching that amount of stuff. There's a company out there that does this, and they do it well from everything I've heard, so I'm going with them. We're just going to try to start filling here. and kind of see how it feels as we go. Try to get it into the tighter, small areas first. See if we can pack it in. Now this stuff is not, it's more like a paste feeling than it is a solid, so it definitely doesn't run like water. And sort of, as you can see, kind of feels like cookie dough actually is probably the best analogy. It looks and feels a bit like cookie dough. So I'm going to try to pack this into the tighter areas, get as much of the air out as possible. Get this packed down tight into here. Alright, so before I go and flatten this down, I actually just finished the pour. I figured you guys wouldn't mind not seeing me just stuff epoxy granite down the top of here. So I do have the 4 bolts in here just so I didn't get any and gull up the threads or get them all nasty. And then basically I just took handfuls, clumps, and dropped it down in there. Made sure I cleared out any that got in here along the way, and then patted it down. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this at all. See if I'll get a... Nope, doesn't look like it, but it is right at my fill level. I'll get a better view of this with a light in a minute, but I measured it. I have 21 inches of clearance that I need, or just shy of 21 inches of clearance for that. And I have about 21.5 inches down to the top of that epoxy granite. So it looks like I am filled to the right level, so it's completely solid with epoxy granite all the way up to here. And then this is all empty and original all the way up here. So now, get you guys in the tripod and we're gonna go. I grabbed a piece of precision ground flat A2 tool steel just because it was something long enough and straight enough. And here we go. So this is a piece of tool steel that's flat ground. It really doesn't need to be this precise. You should be able to eyeball it, but I'm going to use this and run it across the top there and see if there's any high spots. Okay, so let's see. So starting here. Looks like didn't actually realize that this nub here in the center was higher than the sides. That's something I'm going to have to take into account. I may grind that down a little because that should not be a contact point. Precision Matthews, if you're watching, I think you messed up there. So this should definitely be below the surface here. In reality, I would like 3-point contact, but 4 points to bolt it down is great. But unless you're, for some reason, your base is hollow right in this spot, that's going to cause you to flex a bit. So I'm going to actually come in and grind that down. So I'm going to leave enough room around the edges around here, like this, that I can come and just with an angle grinder, I'm going to grind that down just a hair so I know it's below the surface. I'll do that after this all cures. But that's something good to know. It might have been some of the problems I was having with flex in my base in the past. See if maybe we can fix that once and for all. Okay, so after a couple passes, I think I got this good. So I'll show you guys. Sitting flat there, and get my arm out of the way here. Gonna run it clean across the top to right there when I hit that bump right there, and then clean off the back. I would say that's probably like 3 or 4 thousandths high, so not the end of the world, but definitely something I'm gonna fix.
Well, that's it. That is how to epoxy granite fill your Precision Matthews PM30 milling machine. This would work with basically any hobby grade machine that you're converting to CNC out there. So the Grizzly line of products, the G0704, the PM25, PM30, basically all of those hobby mills that are out there that people are converting to CNC are in some way, shape, or form the exact setup that I have on my PM30. So they may be, you know, an 80% size version of it like the PM25 is, or the G0704, or they may be a little bit laid out differently in how their castings were done, but if you have any size machine, you can basically do what I just did, and it really did make a difference. I don't think this was the end all be all of rigidity, and you know, took my machine from $2,500 hobby machine and turned it into a $60,000 VF2, but it definitely made a difference from my perspective, and it's something that I'm happy I did. I haven't really put the machine through its paces yet, so I can't tell long term if this is going to make a big difference or not, and I really wish that I was able to somehow fill that entire column. I will say with the machine together now, I always knew that with this 5 horsepower motor, which is above and beyond, way above and beyond. If you're out there and you're looking to do a motor upgrade, 3 horsepower is way enough. I like to do things in excess and go a little bit above and beyond, but I knew that the machine would end up being the limiting factor for the cuts I can take, and for the machine, the limiting factor is the column. So if you can just see the small diameter, the small rectangular shape of that column, it really is the weak point of the whole machine. Just pushing on the head and pulling on the head, I can get it to flex almost 1/1000th of an inch just by pushing and pulling when I put an indicator on it, and that's with not a lot of force. So when it's in a cut, it's not seeing those same forces, but it's definitely flexing, and it's something that I wish I could have fixed a little bit better. The epoxy granite in that small portion of the bottom of the column didn't do much for overall rigidity of the column. So what I may do down the road is go ahead and brace the column with maybe some tubing or something like that that's filled with some more epoxy granite, and then bolt that straight to the base so that that is more rigid and the column is no longer the weak part. So I'm basically just tackling this project as, you know, find a problem, fix a problem, and I've fixed a lot of problems. I may have created another one with this, or at least highlighted that there's another problem, and that's the rigidity of the column. So I'm still thinking about doing an automatic tool changer down the road. That would be really great for productivity for me, and when I do that upgrade would be a great time to also brace the column, because it'll give me something to mount the automatic tool changer to. So if you like watching this video, please leave a comment, tell me what else you want to see, tell me the depth of video you want to see me do, or if you want me to keep making these brief or a little bit shorter condensed versions of videos, and I'll be happy to do that. I think I'm probably going to forego a lot more of the upgrade series here and just kind of get into more content that I enjoy filming, like cutting things on the machine. And you know, I'd had some viewers on Instagram ask if I could do a metrology video on just the basics of using calipers and digital micrometers. I just got a new Mitutoyo 0 to 1 inch micrometer, and I asked if anybody'd be interested to see a video that compares a cheapo $30 Shars 0 to 1 inch micrometer to a Mitutoyo that's, you know, $200, and a couple people had said that that might be useful for them, and maybe just the basics of using calipers and micrometers. So I think that's going to be really where I try to take this channel and show you guys cutting footage, show you guys cutting firearms, because I really do enjoy, you know, making red dot cuts and doing a lot of custom modifications to firearms. It's kind of the genesis of this channel and genesis of what I'm doing here. I have about a dozen slides that I need to cut. If you can't tell, I kind of like guns. This is not my whole collection, and definitely not the best collection that's out there, but it is a lot of the firearms that I like shooting off in and just decided to throw on a wall for a while. So if that's stuff that interests you, please post a comment below, because I'm kind of just talking to thin air sometimes, I feel like, and it's nice to have those comments and give me sort of some direction on what you guys want to see. I'm not doing this to make money. I never will be. I really just enjoy sharing the experiences I have. I've learned a lot over the years by watching YouTube videos, and I'd love to pay that back. I'd love to help you guys out. There's a lot of people in the comments that can attest to if you have a question. I am typically up at some pretty insane hours. I'm filming this video at 4 o'clock in the morning, so I really don't have a problem answering any question out there up to the best of my ability. So if you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. Shoot me an email and we'll talk about anything you need. I've helped probably a dozen people convert their machines to CNC. I've helped a couple other people that are trying to follow along in the conversions that I'm doing. So if you have any questions, just let me know. And thank you all for stopping by, for commenting, for liking, and for taking the time to watch the video, because it does take me a bit of time to make it, and it's nice to know that I'm not making it for no reason. So thanks again.